So are Christians intolerant? Should we just include everyone, or is it mean and intolerant and hateful to exclude? Welcome to Docked Out. This is Steve Ward, and I am thrilled that you are with us today. On this show, I really want to take it to the next level in our conversations, discussions about a whole wide range of issues. Our culture is going through a lot. There are critically important issues in conversation today, and I want to help us all be able to step up and engage those conversations thoughtfully, meaningfully, and with compassion. So I hope you find this program a resource. And once again, I'm thrilled that you're with us. You can email me anytime, steve@dockedout.org, and I'll get back with you as soon as possible. I'm happy to discuss questions and concerns that are raised on this program in future episodes. The world is online. I think you would agree. Social media, the internet, smartphones, conversation tends to take place these days online. And that's okay. There are many advantages to that, to having that connection. But I think there are also some dangers. And what I want to try to do is get us away from the online-only interactions with one another socially and get back to those opportunities to just sit and talk and have a good time and share ideas. But I do recognize that that takes practice. It's a skill that we have to develop. With the world online, we need to practice and engage one another in thoughtful, compassionate ways in person, and fine-tuning and honing those skills that are going to help us have conversations with others about some of these super important issues. And remember, we are trying to plant seeds in the hearts of others, the ultimate goal to lead people in the direction of truth. We believe in the direction of truth as outlined in the Christian faith. And that's what I want to talk to you more about today. We are seed planters. Now, this discussion today might feel a little bit unusual, a little bit different than one you're used to, even uncomfortable, something that we're just not used to. But I want to take some time and talk about truth. Truth itself. First of all, what is it and why should we care? And I'm here today to try to make a case, to try to communicate to you that I believe very strongly that truth matters. We live in a time of great confusion, and it's essential that we're able to cut through that confusion, so to speak, with skills and evidence that will help point us in the direction of truth. But this is difficult because so often today in this postmodern culture, as we call it, there's a lot of people out there that you're going to encounter who don't believe that truth is even real, that there is such a thing as absolute truth. And that notion is just simply very uncomfortable. Here in the United States, and I would say in the West in general, we've become very individualistic in our culture to the point where the idea that there are things that are just plain true. There is a given reality that we must work within and live within that we can't just change by wishing the world to be different, by having our own feeling of reality or trying to change the world around us to try to change fixed objective truths just with our opinion or our belief system, our worldview, our feelings, what have you. This is so critically important, and I think this is often lost today. The culture changes, but the truth does not change, as I'm going to go on and help define it. So let's go ahead and just do that right now. And let me start by just making a statement that might sound a little bit just bizarre when you have to just pause and just think about what I just said. But here it goes. Try to digest this for a moment. If I make the statement, or somebody you encounter makes this statement, there is no truth. Is that statement true? Well, it can't be, because the statement just said, there is no truth, which means that that statement itself, there is no truth, can't be true. So that is a self-defeating statement, a self-defeating claim. That statement, there is no truth, is making what we call a truth claim. It's making a statement that it claims to be true, but it is self-defeating. Keep that in mind as we walk through a little bit more about some definitions. I want to help you understand that we have to try to sift through and cut through some of these self-defeating notions that are out there in the culture and follow the evidence where it leads. Regardless of where it leads, that's our mission. We are truth seekers. So there are two, I would say, broad categories or major distinctions in this topic that we'll just call truth. So there is subjective truth, and then there is objective truth. Subjective truth is simply things that are subject to you, subject to your preferences, hence the name subjective. So if you like certain foods, certain colors, certain types of clothing, certain cars, that's fine. Those are your truths, and those are really true for you, but they are subjective. They are pertinent to you as an individual, and they're based on your own belief systems, background, preferences, opinions, likes and dislikes, and that's totally fine. Nothing at all wrong with that. I'm not suggesting so, but I want to help you understand that subjective truths are very, very different than the other category, which is objective truth. So, for example, an objective truth is something that is just plain true in and of itself, regardless of what we think about it, regardless of our personal opinion or belief system or circumstances. Objective truths are always true, regardless of the people involved, the place, the circumstances, the time, historically, in the past, present, future. Objective truths are just simply true. And one example that I think helps drive this point home are some of the principles of things that are very strictly true, like mathematics, like the laws of physics, gravity, for example. As we are walking around on planet Earth, there is a gravitational force of attraction between us, our center of mass, if you want to be technical, and the center of mass of the Earth. And we have a specific weight based on that force. We can't change that. I can't wish away or decide that I'm not going to follow the law of gravity and just start floating away. It just doesn't work that way. Objective truths are always true. We can't change them with our opinion. There are many, many examples to go through, but that just gives you a little bit of a flavor. There's a massive difference between subjective truths and objective truths. Keep that in mind. We don't create objective truths. We investigate the world. We study scientific exploration. We discover objective truths. We don't create them in our minds or in the realm of our personal opinions. Here's another simple example. Here's an intersection. We have to choose. Let's say you're driving down one of these roads. You come to the intersection, and let's say you're trying to get to some destination. You might have to turn left or turn right or go straight. You have to make some choice. Now, this is really, it might seem obvious and really not necessary to say, but I want to go ahead and explain this anyway, because sometimes these type of truths can be lost on us as we get into more vague or obscure or philosophical type of concepts like religion. But you have to choose left, right, or straight. And the point, what I'm trying to say, is simply that turning left is not the same as turning right, which is not the same as going straight. They are not the same. And this gets us to this idea of non-contradiction. The law of non-contradiction, it's more of a philosophical term, but basically all it's saying is that two opposites can't be true at the same time. You can't turn left and turn right at the same time. It's just not possible to do so. And that might sound simple, but I think you would agree as we discuss more how our own biases sometimes lead us in the direction of kind of blending subjective truths and objective truths together in a way that actually does contradict. And the implications are really huge. So I gave a few examples. You might like cheese pizza. I like pepperoni pizza. Those are subjective to me and to you. But objective truths are not subjective to us. And, like I said again, this sounds obvious, but remember that the larger issues of life, philosophical concepts, religious ideas, religious truths, theological teachings, all follow those laws of logic. The laws of logic are other examples of objective truths that we can't change. So when we ask ourselves the larger, more important questions of life, the important things that we all want to know, we have to follow some basic rules of trying to understand what terms mean and how to decide what is true, because multiple conflicting things can't all be true at the same time. Let me take this a little bit further. Okay, so what are some of the big issues of life that most people over human history have thought of and been concerned about? So these are things like, who am I? Where did I come from? How did I get here? How did the universe come to exist? Was the universe created? Did we evolve? Did I have a past life? Is the universe infinitely old? Is evolution true? Where does morality come from, and does it matter? Is God real? Who was Jesus, and did he rise from the dead? And who cares anyway? What happens when I die? All of these things must follow the same law of non-contradiction. And we are not free to just subjectively decide in the realm of our own opinion what is true. Things are either true or they're false, and they can't all be true at the same time. That is the key. World religions and world philosophies all vary very greatly in their answers to those questions that I just mentioned. The Islamic answer to where we came from is different than the Christian answer, which is different than the Buddhist answer, and so forth. And they can't all be true at the same time. Is reincarnation true or not? It really comes down to a yes or no question. Reincarnation cannot be true and false at the same time. That violates this principle of non-contradiction. There are so many other theological things too that fall into the same type of thought process. So keep that in mind. All religions, here's the key. This is the punchline. All religions cannot all be true at the same time. Now, in our culture, we have this idea of pluralism. You might have heard that. The idea that basically all religions are the same. And therefore, since they're all the same, doesn't really matter what you think or believe. I want to try to break down that barrier for you and help you to understand that that's impossible. Pluralism just cannot be true. All religions are not the same because they have answers to contradictory questions, or I should say they have contradictory answers to many, many questions. Now, proponents of pluralism will often say, well, okay, maybe there are some differences. There are cultural factors, historical factors, theological differences maybe, but none that are really showstoppers. All religions want to just try to teach some type of basic morality. Therefore, they're really all the same at their core, and what you think and believe doesn't matter. I want to try to point out and shift your thinking a little bit and help you to see that you have to decide, how do you know what is true? So we need to build skills and learn how to follow evidence. According to non-contradiction, either pantheism is true or it's false. Reincarnation is either true or false. Evolution is either true or false. The creation was either true or false. God is either real or he's not. Can't be both ways. Simple but profound and a different way of thinking, but we've got to get here. We've got to get used to this type of reasoning if we're going to cut through the culture and discover reality. Okay? We tend to not like the idea of absolute truth. And I think the reason is simply that this idea is uncomfortable. We've become so individualistic in our culture that we don't like to feel like we have limitations put on us, because those limitations are a reminder that reality is not ours to create and not ours to change. And we like to just control our environment and our circumstances and be led by our feelings. And I want so much to get us away from that. There's a tendency to treat all ideas and opinions today as equally true or equally valid. That's the you do you type of concept. Well, you do you, that's relativism. And that it comes out of atheism, or I'll call it naturalism. So the idea that there is no other, there's nothing else other than the physical world, for example. And if that's the case, then there is no objective truth or morality. There are no objective standards of morality. You can create your own belief system based on your opinion and based on your feelings rather than the facts. This is the cultural tendency of what's going on today. And this is a dangerous trap. It has philosophical and theological pitfalls, self-contradictions, and it's just plain not true. My challenge to you: don't follow your feelings, those beliefs. Follow the evidence. Find the facts and follow the evidence. That is how we are to succeed in discovering the truths of the world around us. And that will include theological truths with profound consequences to each of us spiritually. Let's rise to that challenge. That's my call. My siren call to you today is to take that quest seriously, if you will. Now, God imprinted his moral law on our conscience. This is coming from the Christian worldview. I believe it to be true, and I want to try to illustrate why. Now, like I said before, many world religions will say, yeah, you should be a good person. Murder is wrong. Be a good citizen, be kind to others, share, don't steal. The list goes on. So the danger, the trap, is to draw too much of a conclusion from that. It doesn't follow that just because there's shared morality across world religions, that doesn't mean that all the world religions are true at the same time. That can't be the case because of non-contradiction. So just try to keep that in mind. You have to get into the detail of what the different world religions are teaching you about larger issues, like what happens do we die? Is God real? Is there a judgment to come? What is sin? Do we have a sin nature? Does it matter? Etc. I think you understand what I'm trying to get at, but realize that there is a conscience that we all have. And this is universal, applies to all people. And this cartoon kind of gives that illustration. You got the devil on one shoulder, the angel on the other. You're trying to think of what to do. You're conflicted. Excuse me. And that's just how we make decisions sometime. But at the core, if you're honest with yourself, at the core of your being, I think we have to acknowledge that we all have a moral compass and understanding of right from wrong that is inherent within us. Now, the Bible gives us some information to help us think through that and understand that a little bit more. Here's Romans chapter 2, verse 14. This is Paul speaking. And it says here, for when the Gentiles, that's talking about non-believers, essentially, for when the Gentiles, which have not the law, do, here's the key, by nature, the things contained in the law, these having not the law are a law unto themselves. Now that might sound a little confusing, but basically there is the written law that the Jews were following at the time of Christ, and historically long prior to that. But in the early church, there was this conflict between new converts to Christianity and those who are sticking to the traditions and the law of the Jews. And Paul is illustrating that actually we all have the law written in our hearts. And when we do by nature the things contained in the law, we're showing or giving evidence that we all have this natural understanding of what right and wrong is. That's the law. And in the next verse, Romans 2:15, it says, which show the work of the law, here's the key, written in their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness. So in other words, God created us and wrote in our hearts his moral law, and that is what our conscience consists of in this way. So keep that in mind. So those are some Bible verses to help you, but understand that pluralism, the idea that all religions are the same, cannot be true, even though there are some shared themes. The reason that we have a shared aspect or overlap in these moral precepts, it's not because all religions are the same. It's because God created us with a conscience to know him and to understand his moral law as the outside source beyond us of truth that is grounded in his nature. And there's a lot to unpack there, and we'll get there in some future programs. Hopefully this will give you a little bit of a start. So if God gave all people a conscience imprinted with moral truth in our hearts, then you would actually expect people all over the world of all times and places and faith groups to share those ideas. That's not necessarily evidence that all religions are the same. That could be evidence that God created us in his image. So keep that in mind. We have to be unbiased. We have to be discerning and not make conclusions too quickly without understanding there could be many possibilities and many interpretations of what we see happening in other religions. But as you get into depth, the world religions vary tremendously and are not compatible with one another. And like I said earlier, they cannot all be true at the same time. To reinforce this, let me say about the issue of pantheism. Can God be within the creation and equal to and be the actual creation itself, and be outside of the creation as a separate and distinct being at the same time? Well, no. Is polytheism, multiple gods, the same as monotheism, one God? Those are not the same concepts, and they cannot be true at the same time. Islam is either true or it's not. Hinduism is either true or it's not. Christianity is either true or it's not. And if the evidence led me in the direction of any one of those particular faiths, that's what I would be. That's what I would believe. Not because of my opinion or my feelings, but because of following the evidence. Now, there's another implication here that I think is really critical as we start to wrap up a little bit for today. Try to keep in mind that all world religions are exclusive. Okay, not just Christianity. Now, Christianity claims to be true. The idea that God created the universe and all of us, death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, and so forth, salvation as a substitution, as a payment for our sin, and so forth. Those are distinct, exclusive claims. Jesus said, I am the way, not one way, not an optional way. I am the way, the truth, and the life. That's exclusive. But remember that Islam, for example, makes exclusive claims also. And they can't be both true at the same time. Paul, here's another verse, 1 Corinthians 15:14, I think summarizes it here really well. This is like the glove drop from the sky. This is like the challenge to go investigate the world and discover what is true and to follow the evidence. He says here, 1 Corinthians 15:14, and if Christ be not risen, then our preaching is vain, and your faith is also vain. Okay, so in other words, Paul is saying that my preaching to you of the gospel message is completely useless. It's pointless. Why bother? And also your faith, your belief is pointless and doesn't have any hope or meaning unless Christ really rose from the dead. This is a call to follow the evidence for the resurrection of Christ as an example in this verse, but as a larger concept. There is no call in the Bible to exercise blind faith. There is no call to blind faith. We face these doors. We have to walk through and pick one of them, our worldview. So how do you know? And how do you do that? Is it blind faith? Well, no, it is not blind faith. We follow the evidence. And even Paul is saying, if there's no evidence, unless Jesus really did die from the dead and we have eyewitnesses and we have evidence, then this is all just a waste of time. That is in the Bible. Often I think we say, well, just believe what the Bible says because the Bible says it. Now that's an approach, but realize that we are to follow the evidence for truth, and it will point us in the right direction. I believe it'll point us in the direction of the Christian worldview every time. And remember, as a closing thought, we are called to investigate first, place our faith second. Our faith is placed on the evidence. So are Christians intolerant? Should we just include everyone, or is it mean and intolerant and hateful to exclude? Well, I tried to illustrate before that all religions are exclusive. Pantheism, reincarnation, creation, evolution, Islam, Christianity cannot all be true at the same time. They are all exclusive. So what am I trying to say, and why does it matter? Well, commonly, in our culture today, you'll understand, the mantra is tolerance. Just be tolerant. And to claim something to be absolutely true is hateful, intolerant, somehow not loving, and so forth. I want to help so much for you to break down that barrier and see the falsehood of those claims, okay? You don't have to agree with varying positions. Tolerance means that you're surrounded by people who think differently from you, and you're tolerant of them. You're accepting of them in your company, you're compassionate, you're loving them, you're talking with them, you're establishing relationships. But that doesn't mean that everything that somebody believes is true. And it doesn't mean that we hate them if we think differently. To be tolerant doesn't mean we have to accept what somebody else says as true. Tolerance means that we allow a diversity of views in our presence, and we welcome those conversations and those discussions. But expressing a view that is exclusive is not automatically hate or intolerance in the way that we're commonly using it today in our culture. In fact, if Christianity is true, and we have a broken, sinful human nature with sin that needs to be accounted for, that we will be held accountable for, if there is a judgment to come, if God is real, if Jesus offers forgiveness and died as a substitution for you in your place so that you can be forgiven and rose from the dead, if that is true, wouldn't it be loving to share that truth with other people? And if you are following the evidence and compassionately engaging with other people, that's not hate. In fact, to look after the well-being of others, to share truth is loving. That is so critically important. And I'm going to wrap up there. More to come. And thank you so much for engaging and for listening and giving me this opportunity to be with you for a brief time. I hope it was helpful and a little bit of a challenge. I know it's different, a little uncomfortable maybe, but I hope that you stuck through it and got something out of the conversation. Email me, visit on social media, doctout.org. Look forward to our next time together. Thanks so much. Take care and have a great rest of your day.